The art of giving and receiving. Not too long ago, I studied the book titled Honor Yourself, the Art of Giving and Receiving. And the ideas in the book are all about the daily stresses in our lives and how to balance what others need with what we need. Sounds like a tall order, doesn't it? And it can be. One of the first pages in the book explains what we're going to talk about today, and I'd just like to read it to you. It's so good. While we are called to give, and to give joyfully, life also beckons us to master the art of balance. We have a duty not just to give to others, but to give to ourselves, and to see ourselves as worthy of receiving. We have a duty to honor others and ourselves. What makes it so hard? We've inherited deep-seated myths about giving that keep us tied up in a lopsided approach to living. It's like trying to walk a tightrope in a straitjacket. We're not free to move a little this way or that way to regain our balance. There is a way out of the dilemma, a way beyond the myths to the magic of honoring ourselves. And it begins where all wisdom starts, through the door of paradox. Now, a paradox involves two elements, two truths, two principles, or two perspectives that seem contradictory. But they're both true. For example, the more you learn, the less you know. It's in the giving that we receive. It's in the dying that we are born to eternal life. And then there are things like death, life, up, down, all of those kinds of things. Male, female, lots of different paradoxes. And the author says the sages of the East and West speak often of what it is like to be caught inside a paradox. They describe it in ways that challenge us to move beyond our narrow thinking. They tell us that life's competing tensions are not contradictory, but complementary. Not mutually exclusive, but mutually inclusive. Life, they say, is not a matter of this or that, but a matter of this and that. That to me was a big aha. I think this picture, the Tai Chi symbol, really says it all. It's two halves that make one whole. Yin and yang are the starting point for change. When something is whole, by definition, it is unchanging and complete. So when you split something that's whole, what happens is it upsets the equilibrium of the wholeness. And what will happen is both halves start chasing each other because it needs to be together. So it tries to come back together and seek a new balance with each other. So today we're going to talk about the paradox of giving and receiving. And the thing we need to know is that we need both sides of the paradox. We can't just have one. And that dynamic tension of opposites is what gives birth to and sustains the ever-changing and ever-evolving elements of the universe. I mean, it's a universal principle. It's how it works, and we need it all to live. Patricia writes this quote, "If we rely too heavily on one side, the universe will step in to wake us up, to create balance, and to show us that we must honor ourselves too." The Sufi Rumi, I love Sufi Rumi, God teaches by means of opposites, so that you will have two wings to fly, not one. And we know that without two wings, you just can't fly. It doesn't work. And the same is true when we're out of balance in our life. And the author writes that the greatest cause of stress in our lives is the inability to recognize and participate in the play of paradox. So we want to learn how to work with paradox and to play with it. Truly, if we give too much, there won't be enough for ourselves. Elizabeth Rawson, who's one of our members here, and who has spent a lot of time teaching caregivers how to care for themselves, told me that 40 to 70% of caregivers die before the person they're caring for. So that's why it is just so important for us to discover ways of giving without giving out completely, right? We have to keep that flow going, that balance going. And there's a myth that we should be selfless, that we should take care of others and forget about ourselves, right? You know, and it's not true, it's wrong. Because what happens to us when we don't take care of our physical and nutritional needs? Our bodies are going to finally let us know. I mean, the universe will step in to let us know. And if we don't take care of our nutritional needs, you know what's going to happen? We're going to get cranky, tired, bloated, full of gas, right? And being full of gas is no fun. More seriously, remember the story about the Buddha? The Buddha left his home, the palace. He left his wife. He left his kids. And he gave up all his material wealth. And he did that because he thought that was the way to enlightenment. Well, guess what happened? He almost starved to death. So he was really fortunate that someone came along and gave him some food. And he began to take care of himself by eating food. And also, afterwards, he talked about that we should walk the middle way, avoiding extremes of self-indulgence and avoiding extremes of self-denial. And I think this teaching still applies today. And so anytime we're in that place where we're at an extreme, we might want to remember the story of the Buddha and bring ourselves back to the middle way. According to the author, there is a scene in the book Zorba the Greek. Anybody has read that book? Well, it sums up the importance of caring for our bodies, and here's the scene. When his boss, head buried in a book and in the clouds, claims he's not hungry and doesn't want to eat the delicious meal Zorba has just prepared, Zorba exclaims, "But you've not had a bite since morning. The body's got a soul, too. Have pity on it. Give it something to eat, boss. Give it something. It's our beast of burden, you know. If you don't feed it, it'll leave you stranded in the middle of the road." So true. So next, let's talk about the myth that our drive to stay busy and our ability to keep busy and doing more makes us strong. Anybody think that? If I do, I'll be smarter, I'll be stronger, I'll be able to do it all, right? But it's not true. It's not true at all. And it doesn't take care of your mental needs. What comes to mind for me when I think about our mental needs is monkey mind. Anybody have monkey mind? You know, that incessant chatter in your minds, it's something that we all deal with and something that can really knock us off our game if we stay there with it. And it keeps us from being in the middle of monkey mind and silence. So what happens? What happens when we don't relax the mind? Well, the example in the book that really helped me visualize this happens in the process of a bowl on fire. So there's the fire, which represents heat or energy, and it's in a bowl that represents our body, and the fire heats up, and it creates heat and energy, and that steam and what's inside is the coolant, and the steam is the heat and energy that is given off. And if the water doesn't boil, if it's just warming up, it's going to create this warming effect. But if it gets too hot and it boils over, the water is going to dissipate. And it consumes the water, dissipates the energy, and that energy is according to Chinese, it's our life force, it's our qi. So once the water is gone, we literally collapse. Monkey mind causes the coolant to boil. So in order to stay in balance, it's important to learn how to still the mind. At Unity, we teach prayer, meditation, denials, affirmations, and a lot of people walk out in nature. That's how they still their mind. They sit at the beach, they ride a horse, they ride a bike, and whatever it is for you, there's lots of tools. Many of the sages knew how critical it was to go into the silence and to go into solitude. Jesus, when he fed the multitudes, the loaves and fishes, afterwards he told his disciples to go ahead in the boat without him. And then when he released the multitudes, he went up into the mountain to pray. And at night, he was there alone. And the Buddha did the same thing. He sat under the tree alone. So silence is so important. There's another myth in regards to our mental needs, and that is we're supposed to support those we love most by sacrificing for them. But the truth is, to give more, we must sometimes give less. We need to set boundaries. Oh no, there's the B word. It's so hard. Learning to say no. Learning to say no, it's sometimes imperative to restore the mental balance in ourselves. In the book, Patricia says, to renew ourselves so that we can continue to give and give well, we must embrace the paradox that saying no will enable us to say yes. And it really helps, I think, to have some guidelines for setting boundaries, because most of us are not really good at it. And she has seven practices that are tips for this. The first one is to just practice on the small things. Turn off your cell phone. Make dinner, have somebody else make dinner for you. Mark had pneumonia, and he's the cook. So one of the greatest things that's happened in our household is frozen dinners. And you can say you're not available. Number 2, clearly communicate your needs. I could swear that people are mind readers, don't you? I mean, they should be, right? But you know what? They're not. So we have to tell them clearly and specifically what we need and what we deserve. 3, exercise your freedom of choice. I love this one. Instead of saying yes right away, take some time for yourself. Step back. Think about it. Think about what's right for you, what makes you feel best, and what you really want. Number 4, put yourself at the top of the priority list. Oh boy, I fall off on this all the time, because a lot of us are helpers and caregivers. We want to help people, we want to. So we don't put ourselves up there, but we have to schedule time for ourselves. And if you know you're going to do a lot of caregiving or something, schedule a massage, schedule a day by yourself, just sit in the backyard and read. And don't let yourself get bumped off the priority list. Next, narrow your focus. This is a good one too. Not only define what you are willing to do, but define what you're not willing to do. Next, problem solve from the heart. So here we are thinking, up in monkey mind, and we need to make a decision. So we really need to take our head and our heart and our intuition and get quiet and decide what is the best way for me to resolve this issue. And then listen. This is what Charles Fillmore did all the time. That's where he got all his great ideas, and a lot of people do. 7, Find out what you are hiding from. So if you find yourself saying yes all the time, there might be a reason. Do you want someone to like you? Do you not want to hurt someone's feelings? What is it? So find out, ask yourself, dig in, find out what you're afraid of, and ask yourself, why am I sacrificing myself? Good tips, I think. Next, let's talk about the balance of giving and receiving between the spiritual and the physical. The myth is, I don't need to take care of my spiritual life to be in the world. Well, the truth is that if we don't take care of our spirituality when dealing with the physical, that we can fall into the ego-driven greed, desire, and selfishness that turns into something detrimental and destructive rather than something that's constructive and helpful. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Science without humanity is the result of focusing on remaking the world without the corresponding focus of remaking ourselves." In other words, to focus exclusively on ways to work our will on the physical world without any regard for whether we have developed spiritual things like wisdom, a higher degree of consciousness, that if we don't have those things, we don't have those things to guide our actions. Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore wrote about his ideas of the balance between the physical and the spiritual. And he wrote, "The heavenly kingdom to which Jesus so often referred is the unlimited spiritual consciousness where mind and body are equal in all activities." So he was saying that heaven is when mind and body are balanced. It isn't one or the other, but both. Physical and spiritual are two sides of the same coin. They express differently, yet they are the same thing. So how do we stay in the middle between the spiritual and the physical? Well, the Buddhists recommend mindfulness. Mindfulness is so helpful. It's a foundation of wisdom and ethics, and it is about learning how to navigate through reality using both spiritual and physical perspectives. It's the middle way. There's lots of information out there on mindfulness, tons of stuff. And a friend of mine gave me a perfect magazine subscription that you might want to get too. And it's called Mindful. And you can check it out at mindful.org. It's just an amazing thing. And it's like we have to just keep practicing these things or we just don't get them in us. I mean, we know this stuff, we've heard about it, but gosh, you know, like it said earlier in one of the quotes, you know, why is it so hard? When we're buying into the myths that we have been programmed to think, whether it's physical or mental or spiritual, I think the first thing we need to do is recognize it, and recognize that we're out of balance. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to know. It seems like we just can't get it and stay in balance all the time. So hopefully we'll get it before there's a crisis. Hopefully we'll get it before all our water boils out. And knowing ourselves is a goal that's extolled by the mystics and masters around the world. And it makes sense, doesn't it? If we know ourselves, we can do something to help ourselves. Again, I think some tips and guidelines might help us. Here's 7. Get in touch with how you feel. How often do you do this during the day? By asking yourself, how do I feel right now? What do I need most right now? What will make me feel more joy and peace in my life? I kind of like to think of the 12-step acronym HALT. Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? I think that's something that's easy to remember and to ask yourself during the day. 2, eliminate either or thinking. If you feel that either or tug of war coming on, tell yourself, I have a right and a duty to give to myself. And when I'm in need, I must also receive. 3, take preventative action or measures. If you've been working a long shift at work or you've been volunteering a lot, set up some time for yourself. get a massage, whatever it is. And 4, check in with your whole self. What part of me needs attention right now? Is it physical? Is it mental? Or is it spiritual? 5, celebrate your victories, even the small ones. Do something that's fun and something that rejuvenates you. 6, take simple steps. Ask, what small step can I do to help make this a world that I want to live in? I love that. I love that. I've never asked that to myself. I get up in the morning, what steps do I want to take to make this world a place where, a wonderful world that I want to live in? And 7, I accept compliments. I was talking to someone earlier about that. And the only appropriate answer to a compliment is,
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. But how often do we say, oh, this old dress, or I got it in the thrift shop. And I'm thinking to myself, I know. That's what I'm saying. If you got it in our thrift shop, that's the Nordstrom of thrift shops, right? You should be proud of that and say, thank you, thank you. But I love it. Thank you. I'm grateful. I appreciate it. And I'm open to more. Well, I hope that this has helped you, and it certainly did for me, identify some of the paradoxes in our lives and help me to notice when I'm stressed out that it's something's out of balance that I need to look at and check out. And once we notice it, we can bring these tools into our lives to make ourselves more balanced and happier. So I hope you'll join me next week. I'm going to talk more about the inner art of giving and receiving and how to honor ourselves. And I hope you go away today and really honor yourself. Take good care of yourself. Keep yourself balanced. That is so important. So I'll see you next week. Thank you.